Welcome to Practical Dream Wisdom. I'm your host, Debra Arlyn. This show is about getting grounded in harmony and growing through healing. Please join me as we tap into the rich source and inner wisdom that our dreams consistently deliver. Through dreamwork, you will find insights and answers to your deepest questions, receive guidance for any lingering doubts, and resolve unconscious conflicts. Together, we will elevate your intuition and increase self-trust while unlocking incredible wisdom from the inner visions and sacred symbols of your dreams. Get ready to start working with your dreams. The Practical Dream Wisdom Show starts now. Hi, good morning, dreamers. I am Debra Arlyn, and you are tuning in to the Practical Dream Wisdom Show on Transformation Talk Radio. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited to dive in. Our episode today is going to discuss how we can unpack the meaning of dreams that feature our mothers or our fathers. And I highly encourage you, if you're able to grab a journal or some paper and a pen. If you're able to listen to the full episode and treat this almost like your own personal coaching session, because we're going to go to some deeper, tender places today as we discuss the relationships that are so incredibly impactful and informative on who we are and who we become as people, which is our relationship with our parents. This is kind of like the classic joke, right? Everybody gets into self-help and going to therapy and coaching and personal development. And what are they talking about? They're talking about their parents. They're talking about their mother and their father. And so in no way are we trying to make light of this, but I also want to encourage you to see dreams about your parents or to see actual real life situations that are happening either with your mother or father, or if you think it's happening because of your mother and father. See this as an invitation to mature and grow. And I'm going to say something that doesn't always land well, but see this as an opportunity to take accountability for your own life and move forward with more clarity and healing and harmony. Before we dive into the topic of mothers and fathers, I want to say I hope that the last episode where we talked about best tips for improving dream recall was helpful. And I always want you guys to know that I'm here to support you. You can reach out anytime. If you actually are able to start working with your dreams in the way that I've kind of laid it out for you, and you are actively working on improving your dream recall, you can send me an email. You can let me know how it's going. You can ask me questions. You can even share your dreams with me. In fact, I'm such a geek for dreams. Like, please send me your dreams. I love them, and I'll be more than happy to help you work through them. So if you want to reach out to me, you can go to my website, which is www.debraarlyn.com. There's a contact form. There's an email there. Feel free to reach out and get the support you need, because I totally understand that dream work is not something we're taught in schools. It's not something that is super relevant, perhaps, in our modern culture. However, I have found that dream work is like hitting the acceleration button on getting to know ourselves and learning how to heal and grow. And really, at the foundational level, dream work helps us self-reflect and get to know our own unconscious mind. So it isn't easy, and it isn't something that's going to start happening for you overnight. But if you have committed to taking the journey to start working with your dreams, I salute you, celebrate you, and want to support you, because what you're doing is you're removing the veil from a huge part of your own psyche, which is the part that lives behind the scenes, the part that comes alive when your conscious waking mind turns off. The part that comes alive and shares stories with you and gives you incredible, detailed metaphors and symbols to work with. And that part, believe it or not, is actually the closest part to your true self. We kind of believe that when we wake up in the morning and we go through our day, that's who we are. That is our personality. That's our presentation to the world. Who we really are is the combination of both how we present in the world, our personality, our choices, but also who we are behind the scenes, right? What's really running? What's the undercurrent behind how we feel, how we think, and the choices that we make? And there's a term that has been kind of weighing on my mind recently that I just want to highlight because it's going to be very relevant to today's episode about mothers and fathers and how we work with them when they show up in our dreams. And that term is unconscious bias. Another way to say it is unconscious projection. So just keep your mind and ears open. We're going to talk about what it means to have unconscious bias or unconscious projection, especially when it comes to our parents. All right. So mothers and fathers and dreams. What's so interesting to me, I realized that mothers are one of the most common dream characters. Everybody's dreaming about their mothers. And it makes sense because I want to pause and invite you to think about the journey that happens with a mother, right? We don't even think about this very often, but I find it really helpful to just kind of take a breath and think about, when did you first meet your mother? What was your first interactions with your mother? And if you rewind far enough, you'll find that you remember you started out being one with your mother, right? We are literally formed in our mother's womb. We feel as if we are so deeply interconnected, and we are absolutely dependent on our mothers to care for us, to nurture us, and grow us inside her body. And if you've explored Eastern philosophy and Eastern concepts, there's kind of a profound moment that is really talked about and used a lot as a metaphor, which is the moment of our first separation, right? We've spent, 9 or 10 months, if we're lucky, if we made it full term, being one with our mothers, not having to worry about our needs, getting that nourishment, getting that nurturing, feeling safe, feeling cozy, feeling held. And then the moment of our birth hits, and we are suddenly separated from the very thing that gives us life and sustains life. Now, birth is so beautiful and it's amazing, but it also kind of leaves an imprint on our psyche, right? It's like, whoa, I was safe. I was in this cozy little cocoon, and now I'm out in the world. I'm separate. Um, and as babies, we have a lot of needs, right? We have a lot of instinctual needs. We have a lot of emotional needs, social needs. We're hungry, our diapers are wet, and our mothers are who we look to unconsciously. Remember, now we're not choosing this because we're babies. We are looking towards our mothers to still give us that sense of safety and nourishment, and continue to deliver the message to us that we are safe, that our needs are going to be met, and that we don't have to be afraid, even though it feels different, right? And why are we talking about babies and births and motherhood? Because these things leave an imprint, not just on us personally, but also collectively. Life reveals itself in patterns. So the pattern of, getting pregnant and giving birth, and then that person, growing and maturing, and then if they're a woman, getting pregnant, giving birth, like patterns is how life reveals itself and how it chooses to express itself. The patterns of life give us what Carl Jung deemed archetypes. Archetypes is a word to describe universal patterns. So the pattern of mothers, the pattern of fathers, the pattern of children, these are universal experiences that all of us at some point come in contact with, by choice or not. And so I'm highlighting this point to say that collectively, the experience of being born and nurtured in a mother's womb, being born into the world, being separated from the mother, and then those first 0 to 7, 0 to 10 years of life are absolutely critical in how we develop, especially when it comes to our relationship with our own mothers. So if you are going through life in this current moment, and by the way, Mother's Day is coming up next month, and then after that month is Father's Day. So again, collectively, as a culture, we're all going to be thinking and dealing with, oh, it's Mother's Day, it's Father's Day. What does that mean for me? What does that bring up for me as I see that our culture is celebrating these holidays and these people? The invitation here is to ask your dreams if they're not, giving you dreams with your own mother and father. You can start asking your dreams to show you where you are in your own development in terms of reconciling your projections, your feelings, your stories, maybe even reconciling your actual relationship. Perhaps you're having an actual conflict with the mother or father, or they're no longer here, but you're still dealing with things that happened when they were alive. Your dreams are here to help you work through these internal conflicts and internal distortions and perceptions. So, let's dive in we're going to talk about both mothers and fathers, and we're kind of going down this thread with motherhood. So let's stay there. When you start having dreams where your mother is a featured character, and like I said, this is actually one of the most common dream characters, your psyche is trying to get your attention to a couple of things. So mothers represent universally the ability to nurture, the ability to have our needs met. Our mothers give us life. Our mothers are our entire world, all the way up until we start hitting the next stage of development of, preteens and teenage years, where we start to really form a sense of self outside of our parents. But up until then, it is all about our parents and our mothers. That's why a lot of people refer to the planet as Mother Earth. Right? It's a symbolic term of endearment to say that the earth, the planet, is always going to provide for our needs, that the planet is always going to give us what we need. And, we're finding out now collectively as a society and as a world that we haven't treated our Mother Earth very well, and it's impacting her ability to meet our needs. So, our mothers. In fact, I want to share this quote from Carl Jung, and of course, I'm always quoting Carl Jung. I promise I read more than just Carl Jung, but we're talking about dreams, so we have to bring him in. Here's what he said: "The mother-child relationship is certainly the deepest and most poignant one we know. The child is part of the psychic atmosphere of the mother. Everything original in the child is blended with the mother image." That is a very powerful statement, but that's what I'm trying to convey here. That even if you're later on in life and you feel like you've kind of worked through any issues with your mother, or you have a great relationship with your mother, or you are a mother and you feel like you're, absolutely crushing it, that's wonderful. But that doesn't change the fact that your own relationship with your mother greatly contribute to that, and it's undeniably a part of your own maturation into that role in your own life. So, I want to share a dream with you from a client from years ago. And this dream has always stood out to me. I remember, going through the session with her on this. She was pretty shaken up. It's a pretty vivid dream. And I'm going to share this with you to give you an example of how mothers can show up in dreams and how to start working with dreams that feature our mother. All right, and I'm going to read the dream as she recorded it and sent it to me, and then as we worked through it in this session. So, I am going to an indoor public pool with my mom, kind of like a YMCA. It's very crowded and busy. While I'm walking towards the pool, a killer whale jumps out of the water and grabs a young girl around the age of 3 or 4 and swallows her. Everyone in the pool is panicked for a moment, but then they all go back to normal and pretend that nothing happened. We leave the pool, and the whole ride home, my mom won't look at me and is completely silent. I am so upset about what happened to the little girl and how no one will talk about it. Oof, right? That's a pretty vivid possibly shocking, intense dream. And like I said, she was pretty shaken up. And I asked her at the beginning of the session if there was something going on with her mom. And she said, no, actually, she was living her life. Her mother and her relationship was fine. She wasn't sure why this dream showed up. So again, I want to circle back to that term unconscious. So even though this client in her waking life felt like everything was fine and she was currently not really having any issues with her mother or she was a mother herself, clearly her psyche was trying to get her attention. And a couple episodes ago, we talked about nightmares, right? And dreams that give us a very strong emotional charge where we wake up and we're kind of shaken up and we can't forget the dream, even though we probably wish we could. And I would say that this dream falls in that category. It's not quite a nightmare, but it's definitely a sign from her own unconscious mind that, hey, there's something here that really needs to be dealt with and looked at and transformed and renewed. And that's the other thing I want to say is that a lot of times when you start getting into working with, your parents and your relationship with your parents and moms and dads, there's a lot of terms that come up in the spiritual world and certainly the personal development world, like mother wound, right? And I remember going through that phase and, trying to heal my mother wound. And I really want to encourage you if you feel like there are issues and there are things that are impacting your life because of your mother or father, I would really encourage you to reframe it as something other than a wound, because then you're kind of just going into it like, I'm broken and, because of this situation, I have these problems and I have a wound. Now, again, we've already talked about how our mothers absolutely impact us and are a huge part of our development and our sense of identity. But again, it's not a wound. It's just a part inside of you that is ready to be renewed. It is ready to be witnessed. It is ready to be brought into the light and transmuted and transformed. So instead of seeing it as a bad thing and like begrudgingly trying to work through it with like a lot of shame or blame, it's actually a really exciting opportunity. Even though it feels maybe like this dream felt incredibly shocking and incredibly like out of nowhere and kind of disturbing to this client, we started this session by first acknowledging how it made her feel and, talking about how there's something within her that is trying to get her attention, and then how this is such an incredible opportunity that her own mind, her own spirit, her own inner self was lovingly bringing something to her attention and was ready to be looked at. That's actually really good news. So, if you're starting to have dreams that are a little bit disturbing or unsettling with your own mother, start there, right? Don't see it as a problem. Try not to talk about it as a wound. Just know that you can trust yourself. You can trust your inner world, your own inner psyche to bring to you exactly what you need to highlight a part of you that's ready to grow, that's ready to have a healing experience, to be renewed. Okay. All right. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, I'm going to show you how we actually broke down the stream and worked with it in a very practical sense, and help this client understand what was going on inside and what next steps would be for her. So again, grab a pen and paper and you'll be able to follow along, and I'll show you exactly how we broke down the stream. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. This is Practical Dream Wisdom, and I am explaining and hopefully enlightening all of you listening about how to work with, first of all, dreams that feature our own mothers. And I want to make that distinction that there are so many ways that mothers show up in our dreams. They can show up as other people's mothers, they can show up as you know, famous mothers that we all know, or fictional character mothers from movies or books. But what I'm really talking about is how to work with mothers that are your mother, right? Your actual real life mother when she shows up in a dream, and why that's happening and how you can use it to grow and learn really wonderful things about yourself and make more conscious choices in your life. So I shared with you a dream from a client from a few years ago, and I'm going to read it again and I'm going to break down how we started to work with this dream and hopefully give you a roadmap if you're starting to record and recall your own dreams, that if you have one featuring your own mother, questions and ways of looking at it to help you get the most out of it in a practical sense so that you can make very conscious, practical choices. But I want to start with kind of re-highlighting the theory about how undeniably impactful our mothers are collectively on us as children. And the mother archetype, right, the mother pattern, represents something to us, again, not necessarily just cognitively, but emotionally and instinctually. Our mother represents our world and our ability to get our needs met. So the way that we experience, perceive, and relate to our mother directly correlates to how we experience, perceive, and relate to the world, to tangible earthly things, right? Because our mother is, first of all, our first home, and then it's also our life source. We breastfeed, we nurse, she rocks us to sleep, she comforts us when we cry. That impacts how we feel the world at large, the places we go, the people we meet, the relationships that we foster, the institutions we have to interact with. All of that is greatly, undeniably informed by how we've experienced our own mother. And as we start working through this dream, I think you'll start to connect the dots and understand what I really mean when I say that. So I'm going to go ahead and read this dream again. It's kind of short. I am going to an indoor public pool with my mom, kind of like a YMCA. It's very crowded and busy. While I'm walking towards the pool, a killer whale jumps out of the water and grabs a young girl around the age of 3 or 4 and swallows her. Everyone in the pool is panicked for a moment, but then they all go back to normal and pretend that nothing happened. We leave the pool, and the whole ride home, my mom won't look at me and is totally silent. I am so upset about what happened to the little girl and how no one will talk about it. Okay, this is a really powerful dream. So much symbolism going on here that we could easily get lost, right? We could just start going down the rabbit hole of looking at every single symbol. But what I like to do, and I especially love to do this in sessions with clients, which, by the way, I do offer dream sessions, and this is how we work with dreams, to go even deeper and faster and help people work through things, is I like to just have the clients sit and just breathe in their own dream, and just notice the original feelings and responses and reactions going on inside as they hear their own dream. And like I said, this client was kind of shooken up. She didn't really understand the dream. It was so vivid and kind of unsettling to her. So she closed her eyes, took a few deep breaths, and I asked her this question. And you can ask yourself this question as you start to work with your dreams. What stands out to you the most? As you hear yourself say the dream out loud and you just kind of allow it to settle in and you breathe it in, what stands out? And what she said was the part of the dream where they were driving home from the pool, she was in the front seat of the car looking over at her own mother, who was like clutching the wheel, eyes fixed forward. There was no communication, there was no open dialogue, and she was in distress about what had happened, but she was really struck by how her mother seemed absolutely in a daze, in a fog, and did not want to talk to her and was not open to any conversation about what had happened. So that was our entry point in, right? Asking that first question after kind of sitting with the dream, what stands out? And what I loved about that response is that it was an actual scene from the dream, right? She didn't go into some sort of story or, kind of distant analysis. She went right back into the dream and said, the ending scene, being in the car, looking over at my mom who wouldn't look at me, wouldn't talk to me. And I could tell there was no way we were going to have a conversation about what happened, even though I was in distress. Okay, so right there, the floodgates opened. And this is where I kind of let the clients take the rein because we started to unpack, what her experience was like with her mother as a child when she was in distress. And again, these aren't things that we're thinking about every day. These are things that happen very early on in our life. They kind of, do what they do, and then we have to move on and get on with our lives. But that doesn't mean they're not still running under the surface. And that doesn't mean they're not still greatly influencing us. So, through the conversation of talking through this dream, it came to light that she did feel, she became aware of something for kind of the first time, that when she was younger and she felt like she was in distress, she didn't feel like she could go to her mother. She didn't feel like her mother was someone she could talk to, that she could share her feelings with or process anything with. And, it didn't make her mad or anything, but it was really good information for her to become aware of. Because the next question is, how do you think that has impacted your life and relationships? Right? Again, our mothers represent our world. They represent, our life source. And if kind of early on we get the sense that, yes, my mother is my world, but I can't open up and share. I can't share my troubles or my distress. She's not available to meet me in that space. How does that impact the rest of our lives? And so a thread is being pulled here, right? And that conversation was really incredible because she did come to the realization that because she felt like her mother was not a place where she could go to process hard things and unsettling things, scary things, um, she became what we call ultra independent. And again, I don't love labels and terms, but again, we live in a world with patterns. So we do have to identify things. We have to become aware of them and give them a name so they make sense to us. But we want to make sure that they don't define us, right? So we're starting to talk about how this client has become incredibly ultra independent. And when she is in distress and when she is having emotional, flare ups, or she's witnessed something terrifying, whatever, she keeps it to herself. She suppresses it and she doesn't really talk about it with people. And that really opened the door for why this dream came to her in the first place, because a light bulb went off and it turned out that there were things going on in her life that were distressing her, that she was just kind of suppressing, that she wasn't talking to with anybody. She was just kind of living life, not really looking at, what was going on. And it turns out she had a broken heart over some situations going on in different relationships where she felt like the people weren't listening to her, like they weren't holding space for her own troubles and emotions. Now, I'm sure if you're listening to this, you're probably relating to this. I related to it. This is a very common universal human experience, right? And it starts to reveal to us our own perceptions and stories that impact how we live our life and move through the world. And I can't emphasize this enough. I want to pause and share that a lot of times when we are working through or becoming aware of, things that happened in our life because of our parents or our parental relationship, our first go-to is, man, I wish my parents were different. I wish they would change. I wish they would have been better, right? We fixate on them. We fixate on the parents. But the reason that our parents show up in our dreams and the reason that sometimes they escalate to being kind of shocking and like, whoa, I really need to look at this, is because it's not about our parents. It is not about creating a story or, confirming an already existing story about our parents or our mothers or fathers, who they are, what they did right, what they did wrong. It's not about an indictment or a judgment on them. It's about showing us how those most formative and important relationships contributed to who we are and how we walk through the world. And the reason I chose to share this dream is because it revealed to the client something about herself that had been running unconsciously for 30 plus years, right? This early life interaction with her mother where she kind of got the message, again, not cognitively and not verbally. Her mother didn't say, don't talk to me about that. She learned, right, through her instinctual interactions with her mother, that the mother was not somewhere she could go to process difficult emotions. And that contributed to her personality, and that contributed to how she deals with things within relationships. Now, here's the final question. What would open up or shift in your life if you no longer projected out onto the world or onto your current relationships that people don't want to listen and that people can't hold space for your messy emotions? Probably one of the most important questions you can ever ask yourself begins with that. What would open up and shift if you decided to look at things differently, or if you were able to look at things differently? Now, it doesn't mean things automatically changing it better. It just means that we start to make conscious choices in a new direction, not choices based out of how we are conditioned and our instincts or our emotional responses from when we were younger. They no longer have a hold on us if we start to think about things this way. And so for that client, the session ended with her deciding that she was going to try and actually open up and share. She was actually going to try and reach out to some of these people and ask if they were willing to communicate. Now, I don't know what happened. I don't know how things went, but I can tell you as a coach who got to spend that hour session with her working on one dream, it was so incredibly satisfying to see the light bulb come on and to see that somebody really wanted to make a positive change in their life because of one dream. One dream opened up the floodgates for incredible insight and awareness and the ability to show up differently in our lives. If we only show up in our lives based on things that happen to us from our very youngest selves, so limiting. So limiting, not a lot of choices, not a lot of opportunity. And that's why working with dreams can radically change your life. Now, there are some other interesting symbols in that dream that I just want to mention, just because I know if you're listening to this, you're curious and you want to know how to go into dreams. And I'm such a geek for symbolism. So let's just talk about a few of those. And then we'll talk about what to do with fathers when they show up in dreams. But the indoor public pool, right? Isn't it interesting that they were going to a public pool? Well, water represents emotions, right? Water represents the fluidity of our emotional landscapes. And sometimes, whatever form water is taking, it can be calm. It can be, massively, the ocean can have tons of waves. It can be incredibly unsafe. It can rain down. It can rain gently and feel soothing. It can rain like a hurricane and feel threatening. I mean, water can take many forms and make us experience things differently, just like our emotions. So that was kind of the first clue, right? Like indoor public pool, water. Okay, we're talking about emotions. And then the fact that it was an indoor pool and kind of like a YMCA. And I think she described that it was like mostly concrete. Her psyche was giving her a clue that there are some emotions here that are blocked, right? We're not out in the open. We're not in the sun. She wasn't at a pool at a five-star resort in Hawaii. She was inside of kind of an old, dingy YMCA. So right there, it's saying, hey, these emotions are they've kind of been suppressed. They're kind of blocked. They're not out in the open. And then, of course, we have a really absurd, a killer whale jumps out of the pool and swallows a young girl around the age of 3 in front of everybody. Why is a whale in a pool? Well, the dream is using this to get her attention to there's something that feels really threatening inside these emotions and makes her feel powerless. Okay, so a young child who is around the age of 3 or 4 doesn't have a lot of power. Right. And I think that's also really important to say when we're talking about our relationship with our parents and how to work through that. It's okay. And in fact, it's totally right to acknowledge that as children, we felt powerless because we were. Children are dependent on their parents to care for them. They're dependent on society, they're dependent on the schools, they're dependent on adults to take care of them and guide them. And, a killer whale jumping out of a pool and swallowing a girl the age 3 or 4 is a perfect symbolic message from the psyche saying the emotions that have been suppressed and blocked feel threatening and they make us feel powerless. They scare us. And we talked about that in the session about how, she's even uncomfortable with her own internal emotions and her own distress. She doesn't even really know how to deal with it. It makes her feel powerless. And then riding in the car, a car represents our direction, where we're going, and how we're getting there. And that ending scene, the one she said that really stood out to her was riding in a car, but she was in the passenger seat. She was powerless. She was upset. The mother was driving the car and fixated on getting where she needed to go. Again, this is all symbolism pointing to kind of what we discovered in this session, which is like this ultra independence, right? It's like, doesn't matter if something bad happened. We got to go. We got to move forward. We got to carry on. We don't want to deal with it. We just got to get forward and get on with life, right? So I'm hoping that what's translating here by sharing this dream with you is, first of all, how every dream, no matter how absurd, no matter how out of the blue it comes and appears to us, is totally filled with rich, powerful wisdom from our own inner wisdom, from the part of ourselves that loves ourselves and that wants to help ourselves grow and break through barriers and blocks and conflicts. So even a dream that sounds absolutely absurd and crazy and kind of weird and maybe a little frightening on its head, when you start to work with symbols, when you start to break it down, when you start to pay attention to how your body is responding to the story, oh my goodness, it's like it becomes this incredible self-loving, self-healing experience. All right, so let's do a quick recap. And then when we come back, we'll dive into what to do with fathers and dreams and what they represent. But I can't emphasize this enough. Mothers are one of the most popular and common dream characters because our mothers, when we're young, are our entire world, and we depend on them and we need them to meet our needs. They inform how we feel about the world and our most, prominent relationships, being able to meet our needs and nurture us and nourish us and, yeah, discipline us and help us understand how to become the best we can be. Here's another quote from Carl Jung before we go to break. He said, "This is the mother love, which is one of the most moving and unforgettable memories of our lives." Many of us probably don't cognitively remember our mothers, coming in at night and rocking us back to sleep when we're crying or changing our diaper. Many of us probably don't remember cognitively our mothers carrying us around in their body, but those memories are there. They're still alive. They're imprinted deep in your soul, in your somatic responses, in your psyche. So it is one of the most moving and unforgettable memories to experience the love and care from our own mothers. And that's why when our mothers start showing up in our dreams, it's an invitation to dive in, to free ourselves and learn about ourselves and ultimately become better people. And if we are mothers, better mothers ourselves. All right, hang tight. We'll be right back and talking about fathers and dreams. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back. And thank you so much for tuning in and hanging out with me today. I'm Debra Arlyn, and I am talking about dreams and how to use our dreams to build self-trust in our own inner wisdom and also learn how to kind of self-coach ourselves through really big growth moments and personal development moments in our life. Our dreams are our best friends. They know everything about us, and they're always speaking to us every single night and bringing in odd or cool or different types of scenarios and scenes, and of course, people. And today we're talking about mothers and fathers and what to do when they show up in our dreams. So we've been talking a lot about mothers, right? And how incredibly important they are. But let's pivot and let's look at fathers, the father archetype, and why our fathers are showing up in our dreams. So the mother represents how we perceive and experience the world and our primary relationships and our ability to get our needs met. So, what does the father represent? The father represents universally and collectively our ability to have stability and provision in our lives. And our father is also a reflection of what it means to have personal power. Now, again, everybody's individual situation and family system is unique and different, and we can't say that, one size fits all. But what we can say is that collectively and throughout human history, there have been certain patterns, and a predominant pattern that has been running for many, many generations is that the father is, quote unquote, the breadwinner. He's the one that goes to work. He's the one that pays the bills and gets us into homes and buys the cars. Now, again, this is all unique and different for every individual. And of course, we're living in a modern time where a lot of that's getting flipped on its head. But when we're talking about archetypes, which are universal patterns, that's the starting point. Our psyches are imbued with generational wisdom, whether we're aware of it or not. And the way that we experience these universal patterns in a personal sense is informed by kind of the natural order, which historically has been that the father is the one that, wears the pants and is the breadwinner and goes to work and provides. The father is usually the ultimate authority in the home as well. Again, not always, but generally. So when our fathers are showing up in our dreams, our psyche is trying to work with us, trying to partner with us to look at how do we feel about our own personal power? How do we feel about our own sense of authority in life? And how do we feel about getting our needs met financially? Right? What's going on in that world? So, again, a mother and father together, kind of for a child, they determine everything, right? And we don't choose what family we're born into, and we can't choose our parents. And so, again, the point is not to work with our dreams to just say, oh gosh, my parents were terrible or whatever. The point is to look at how did we cope? How did we develop out of that mother-father situation when we were young children? There's a term that gets thrown around a lot called the inner child. And again, kind of like I was talking about earlier with like trying not to see things as like a wound, but trying, or, my inner child is trapped or traumatized. Absolutely difficult things happen to us. But again, here's another Carl Jung quote. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. So dreams are helping you have more conscious choices in your lives, no matter what has happened to you. So I want to share a dream, and it's a really simple dream. In fact, I never even got a written copy of the dream. It was a dream that one of my clients who I was working with over a long period of time, we had a 6-month coaching package we were working through because she was going through a very difficult career transition. And this career transition came after her father had passed away. So we had just started working with dreams. And in fact, I didn't even realize this. Here's a perfect example of a client who came to me and said, I don't dream, so we're not going to be doing dream stuff. And I said, well, let's try because I'm a boundary pusher. No. So this dream I'm going to share with you was the very first dream that she had after following the best dream recall tips that I gave her that I've all shared with you. She had a dream that she remembered, and it was her father, and it was very emotional. So she didn't share with me how she wrote it down, but she came into the session and she was very emotional and there were lots of tears. And I asked her if she had a dream, and she said yes. And the dream it was all black, and she felt like she was hovering over her father's funeral because, like I said, her father had passed, and this had really rocked her world. She was very, very close to her dad. And then she was going through this massive career transition and just wishing so badly that she could, talk to her dad. So she said in the dream it was all black. She was hovering over kind of the coffin of her dad's funeral. And then suddenly her dad appeared and he was walking towards her with his arms stretched open as if he was going to give her a hug. And she woke up and she was just so emotional. She was wishing that it was real and that her dad was really there. So, in working with this dream, the first question is, what stands out to you? What stands out to you about this dream after you kind of breathe into it and sit with it? And she said that what stood out to her was her dad's arms outstretched because I guess he wasn't a very affectionate father, but he was she described him as being very present. He cared and she could talk to him. And he always kind of had practical wisdom to help her navigate life. So she said she was shocked that in the dream the dad was coming in to give her a hug. Now, I want to pause here and say that a lot of times when we work with people in dreams, I always like to say, what does this person represent to you? What part of you is represented in this person? But sometimes the emotional connection to the person in the dream, like this case, she could not help but just see this as her dad because she was longing for him and yearning for him, and he was so important. So we treated this dream, we took the client's lead, right? We took the client's lead and we treated it as if it was her dad, interacting with her through the dream and what that would mean for her. And so the part standing out to her about his arms being outstretched and wanting to give her a hug, I asked her how that made her feel. And of course, there was a lot of emotions. And she said, I wish I had been more affectionate with my dad. I wish I had hugged him more and been closer to him physically. We were close emotionally, but we didn't express it. Um, and then she said the other part that, stood out to her and made her feel emotional was his funeral. So, our fathers represent authority. Our fathers represent, our ability to find that personal power within. And for the sake of time, I'll just kind of get to the end of the session that we were able to arrive at, which was she felt like her father had shown up in her dream and was trying to show her that he also had wished they had been more affectionate and that he could have comforted her more. And I asked her, if that had happened or if you were able to do that moving forward in your life with other people you're close to, what would that change? What would that shift for you? And she felt like it would give her more personal power. She felt like it would give her a sense of control and authority, that she wasn't afraid to connect with people. Like she could talk to people and she could comfort people verbally and give them advice. In fact, I think she was like a guidance counselor, but she really struggled with physical affection and expressing emotion. So from that session, she felt like she would actually feel more confident in her ability to express herself from a place of power, from a place of love, from a place of authority and confidence, not just verbally and with great advice, but through physical affection. Now, I think that that's really beautiful. I mean, dreams sometimes are just coming to give us just the most basic, simple nudges of, hey, maybe hug people more, maybe display that affection to people that you love and care about. You don't always have to give them great advice or talk to them. You can just be with them and you can be tender with them. And a lot of us struggle with tenderness, and a lot of us struggle with confidence and owning our own inner authority. And a lot of that comes back to our perceptions and our experiences of our own fathers. I think it's worth saying that, we tend to idolize our parents. Hero worship is something that kind of comes naturally to children because, again, we feel powerless and we see them as our entire world. And perhaps we've had fathers that have been volatile. Maybe they've had tempers. Maybe they were not affectionate, whatever the case may be. But that doesn't have to be the story for the rest of our lives. And dreams that bring in our mothers and fathers are helping us grow. They're helping us reclaim our power. They're helping us make more conscious choices and interact with the world and our relationships and authority in new ways that are not going to be as limiting, and they're going to help us become our best self. So, after this episode, knowing that Mother's Day and Father's Day are coming up ahead, I want you to get that dream journal. I want you to start practicing, recalling, and working with your dreams. And if you happen to have dreams that feature your mother or your father, dive into them, write them out, sit with how they make you feel, ask yourself what stands out, how does it make you feel, and just watch your psyche open the doors for you and just confidently walk down the path of reflecting on how your own relationships with your mother and father and your own unconscious coping mechanisms because of that are currently running and informing your life, and maybe there's new ways to be and new things to try. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. I'd love to hear from you. Again, I want to support you. Go to debraarlyn.com. You can download my free ebook. You can send me an email. I want to support you on this journey of discovering your own inner wisdom and your own brilliancy through your dreams. All right, everybody, take care. Hi, I'm Debra Arlyn, the host of Practical Dream Wisdom, and be sure to tune in every second and fourth Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on Transformation Talk Radio, where we have been unraveling the magic of dreams in a practical, enjoyable, and accessible way. Nearly 26 years of our lives are spent sleeping and dreaming. This is an evolutionary necessity and an invaluable self-healing and self-empowering practice for the body, mind, and soul, not to be dismissed or overlooked. For more information, visit my website, www.debraarlyn.com.